Welcome back to another episode of Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols. Today I spoke with Anne Therese Gennari. She's a former fashion model and current entrepreneur. She's the co-founder of an ethical modeling agency called Role Model Management, which I am happily represented by. So Anne, thanks for taking time out of your day. I know you're literally Wonder Woman because you're always making an impact and advocating on such incredible topics. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
I am just so incredibly proud of you. I was on Facebook of all things, and I was like, "Oh my God, like what is she up to?" And I saw that you started, your own agency. I was just like, "What?" So we're gonna have to dive into that because it is just so impressive. And I forget, we met in New York many years ago, huh?
Yeah, I ran into you on a casting for New York Fashion Week in February. And I remember we were both just over the fact that it was like a snowstorm outside and it was Friday afternoon. We were like, what are we doing here? Kind of that vibe. But yeah, that's you. It was like just a room filled with models and it was crazy like always in Fashion Week. And you were just super sweet and we connected and that's sort of our story, I think.
Yeah. I remembered just like chatting with you and you just being so authentic because especially during Fashion Week, I don't know what it is, but I feel like sometimes people are kind of out to get each other. It was kind of the vibe sometimes. So it was nice that you weren't like that.
I mean, likewise, girl. It was actually my first Fashion Week season, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And you had a lot more experience, and yeah, it's definitely that vibe. It's not like people are out to get each other, but it's so competitive and you're
Yes.
just exhausted because you go to casting after casting. And like if you're lucky, you may book one show, but you don't really know. And so of course you're just like eyeing around the room. It's like, is she gonna take my spot? And is she more, fit for this job than I am? So yeah, it's hard to be authentic or kind, and that is why I feel like I was drawn to you for that reason.
Considering where we are now and, role models, it's funny how the world works and connects people. And I think I was meant to bump into you that snowy, cold day.
Yeah, I feel like nothing ever happens it happens for a reason, and it sometimes takes years for you to understand why, but could not agree more.
Yeah, it's like a little bit, but here we are. So let's talk a little bit about your career as a model to start off. When did that start for you?
So I do not have the most typical modeling experience, if there is anything of that kind. I feel like everyone has their own story. But when I met you, I was just signed with an agency and I didn't even have my com card, which is a card you bring with you to go to castings to show your measurements and stuff.
Mhm.
They haven't even had time to make me one. So they still sent me out like, a chicken to the foxes sort of in Fashion Week season and just said, go out there, see what, if you get anything. And that was my start to the more professional side of modeling. I had been trying to build my book and just work my way into the industry for about a year. And I would say, in modeling standards, sort of like a grandma because I started it out pretty late. I always wanted to model when I was younger, but I grew up on the countryside of Sweden, and so the reality for me wasn't really one where I would just, suddenly become a model and start doing all these cool stuff. So I'd never really like made any sense of that dream until I moved to New York City and actually went there for my master's degree. And in being there, people kept asking me on the street if I was modeling because, I'm tall and all these things. And
And
um,
beautiful.
thank you. Well, it was just interesting how people kept asking me, and like what you just said with the universe, I'm like, what is it? Like, it was just in one week, I think three people stopped me and asked, and I've been walking down the streets before, and no one's ever asked me that question. So I'm like, is the universe trying to send me a sign here? And at the same time, I was very, and still am, but super passionate about things like the environment and climate justice and human health and however all of that is sort of interconnected. And I thought to myself, well, what if I were to become a model? I would then gain a platform that I can speak from, and maybe people will start to listen to what I have to say, because right now I'm a nobody. I have no followers. No one really cares about anything that I do, so I need to get cool first. And so that was actually my window to modeling. And in having that sort of like awakening, I said to myself, well, you have zero experience and you know nothing. So just, do some research online, start building a portfolio. I got some just advice from photographers on what to do and how to think about it. Basically, they told me, you're old, you need to fake until you make it, and just go out there and tell them that you have more experience than you do, which is what I did. And it brought me to being signed with my agency in New York, and sort of that's where my story started. And I think we're gonna start talking about where it led me to. But yeah, that's my intro to modeling.
Wow. Fake it till you make it always. That is it's funny because it usually works and like people are like, "Oh, should I?" But the answer is usually yes. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And some people don't like the fact that people have to start somewhere, but the fact of the matter is we all do. Would you describe your experience in modeling? Was it positive, negative? Did you feel like you had to change it all?
I would say a mix of everything. The negative side was, first of all, I did it because I wanted to gain a voice and a platform, and I feel like that voice was just stripped even further. As a model, I was told not to have an opinion, to sit quietly in my corner, to just do what I'm told and show up when I'm asked to be there. And I'm an entrepreneur, so that didn't really work well with me because I want to be able to plan my time and,
Yeah,
kind of
both.
decide my own life. And I'm like, really have to be there in 40 minutes? That's like, oh, not really according to my schedule. But, so things like that. And then I tried to communicate with my agency that I was super passionate about certain things, and there were, a certain range of clients I would love to work with. And they were sort of listening, but not really. And they were like, yeah, that's great. And I think, the castings I was getting sent to was just not at all aligned with what I wanted to do in the world. And so that didn't sit well with me. And then also learning so quickly how, as a model, you're just seen as an object, and you just have to get used to people talking about you like you're not there, talking about your body like you're not there. And I remember being on a casting once, and I told myself, like, they're not talking about you. This is your body as a product. This has nothing to do with who you are. And
Mhm.
you have to be able to just take yourself out of that, which is terrible. But I'm happy that I was as old as I was. I mean, I was 24 at the time. Had I been 16 or 17, it would have broke my heart. So that's something I would say I don't like about modeling. The things I do like that really surprised me were people like you, and learning that models really care for each other, and models actually do want to be there sometimes and support one another and help each other out. So I think that was the most positive insight that I gained.
I think there's something you mentioned there. We as models, we do kind of come together because we all know how it feels to be picked apart and to feel isolated. And it's so important that you said, I was 20, 24, and I was told my body was like this. And I mean, God, I was being told that since I was 14 years old. And it just blew my mind, broke my heart, made me think so poorly of myself. But now I look back on it and I'm like, I am who I am from the things we go through. Do you think that if you hadn't have been a model, do you think you'd ever own a modeling agency? And what does role models mean to you?
Well, first of all, no. And that's why I think the universe and life is just so incredible. I was modeling professionally for about 5 or 6 months, so my career was very short but sweet. I did leave my agency because actually I quit school, and so I left. I just lost my visa, so it wasn't like I was kicked out because I was terrible, even though maybe they would have. But that was not the path. I just decided that this was not for me. I need to find a different way, and but I feel like I got enough experience and insight into the industry where I could now start my own agency, which is what it led me to. And I think my drive, like being a model, had always nudged me somehow. I always felt drawn to being a model, and I couldn't put my finger on why. And it was so funny because I found myself on a catwalk and just not at all feeling comfortable in that situation. So I'm like, why am I forcing myself to do this? Where, in reality, I would love to just sit at home and like by my computer and write and do all these creative things that I'm really passionate about. But I think sometimes you're thrown into situations that enables you to grow, and that can then pivot you into the next part of your life.
you went from modeling to a boss lady, and you've always been a boss lady, like ever since I met you. I think we connected also just on our entrepreneurial spirit. I think because being a model, you really have to be able to market yourself and be comfortable with the platform that you start, and even when the world can want to silence you. So, what would you consider to be your main platform?
As in,
When someone asks you, what is the thing you are most passionate about?
okay, that is very easy to answer. I am the most passionate about nature and the partnership that we as humans play with nature. And I think that is a story we need to write a different script to. And if that we do, I think we can find much better ways to live our lives and also to find ways to reverse global warming and pave paths for a new future. And so that is my ultimate passion. I started the agency Role Models Management, which is an ethical agency focused on social justice and climate justice and basically enabling models, actors, musicians, people with a platform to speak up about things they care about. And our hashtag is proud to inspire, which means own your influence and understand that you have the power in the world to make change. And that is beautiful. And you need to really like own that. So I would say my biggest platform is just to make change and to help drive change in so many aspects of the word. And I love empowering other people. And I love finding the spark of light in people. And when you see someone understand that, oh, I have a place in the world, I can actually use my voice, I can use my platform, I can help and inspire other people. And when you see that light spark, it's just so incredible because, it's like a network of light suddenly just going all over. And it's like it spreads through a room or through a city or through the world. And yeah, it's I had a meditation once actually a couple of years ago, and in my meditation I was in a big city. It was before I moved to New York, and I saw myself walking down the streets of New York, and suddenly there was just like these like streams of light going from one person to the other, and it all created this one network. And that was like a huge insight for me. We're like, we're all just one, and we've been so separated for the longest time. But ultimately, I think we all want to be together. We all want to be connected. And if we can learn to be so, we can start building for a more beautiful world. So that's my platform.
Wow. Wow. So eloquently spoken. I think just passion, we are as people are passionate and we want to be connected. Human connectedness is just so important, and I think we're living in a world where it's almost divided, and I think calling it out and saying, hey, this is a problem and why can't we all be one, because at the end of the day we all live on one planet. We're all brothers and sisters. It's nice and refreshing to hear that people such as yourself and starting an ethical agency. What does that mean for someone that might be listening and goes, well, what is an ethical agency?
That is a good question. For us, an ethical agency is an agency that looks to, I mean, all parts of the industry. So part of being an ethical agency is that we represent quote unquote role models. So a model or a singer or actor that wants to, use their influence to do good in the world. And so that's something that we really seek in people. So that is why we sign people like you, because you are out to change the world. And so you're more than just a pretty face. And we really want to start shifting the industry in that direction where brands understand the value in booking talent just like that, because then they can align their values with someone who has similar interests, and in together we can just create a much more powerful campaign. And so part of being an ethical agency is representing talent that speaks those values, and that could go from racial, justice to animal rights to human rights to climate justice. We have so many different talents with different passions. And then also for us, it's really important to look to the model side as well and make sure that models are healthy and well taken care of. We love hosting events and summits. Before COVID hit, it was more in person, but now we're taking it online. But starting to build a community feeling where models can come together and ask each other questions. And I think you have to remember that, especially nowadays, younger kids and all sorts of people look up to celebrities, and we follow them on social media, and we look to what are they doing, what are they eating, like what is the sort of things they promote to the world. And I think it's really important that the people we look up to actually promote healthy values and start build for a world that we want to live in. And I think that is, the second part, making sure that the models represent are purveying those healthy values too, so that whoever follows her actually benefit and can ripple effect that energy.
Do you think that young boys and girls are being pressured in any sort of way to either look a certain way or act a certain way? What's your stance on that?
Well, unfortunately, way too much. If not directly, then indirectly. And it's hard with the culture and the climate we live in today. And I say that as in, a social climate where we have apps and filters that make us look perfect. And it's just a distorted image of what reality looks like. And we forget that, what we see online is sometimes or so many times just a perfected image of someone, and we don't see their bad sides. I think it's starting to become more of an authentic approach, especially amongst younger people, where we're looking for that realness versus the perfection. But yeah, I think we have just unrealistic body goals and all sorts of goals. Like, it's just to maintain that sort of look,
Yeah.
it's just not healthy, and it's almost impossible at times. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think not to like mention anyone specifically, I just think when kids hear certain names that are well known, there's certain almost body image standards associated with them and brands that they're associated with, and it's kind of like, ugh. Do you think that brands are claiming that they're trying to be more ethical, or do you think it's kind of a front?
It depends on the brand. There is a lot of greenwashing, which is the environmental stance to it. I think right now, if you just look around from what happened with Black Lives Matter, and suddenly every fashion brand is posting black models, and it's like you go down their feed and it's been white, 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 and suddenly there's like a few black models, and they're just trying to cover up because they understand now they've been wrong. I think if you are a brand and you really want to be part of the right movements and make change, first of all, I talk about this a lot, but it's very powerful to owning one's shame, and that goes for everyone, because shame arises when you realize that maybe you've been wrong or you've been ignorant or you've been benefiting from something that you weren't just aware of before. And once you start learning that, the way things are working are not good for everyone, sorry, are not good for everyone, it can be shameful. And I think the best way to deal with that is just understand that this shame has come up for a reason and actually means that I care, because otherwise I wouldn't feel shameful. But then how can you transition out of shame into acceptance? So accept that you've been wrong, accept that you've been benefiting from something that may not be equal to everyone. And then how do you authentically communicate that? So instead of just trying to cover up and then suddenly, oh, we're so ethical and we care about this and that, we're like, that's not really true, because you haven't so far. And that's okay, because like maybe you just were too ignorant, and it goes for a lot of society. So you're not alone. But I think just coming forth in a very authentic and honest way and say, we're learning, thank you for letting us be part of this awakening. And we're listening and we want to do better. And, not everyone's like, not saying we're not perfect, but just, I think if you are a brand and you really want to come across as ethical, transparency and honesty is the only way.
Yeah, honesty is so crucial, especially with, movements like with what's going on with Black Lives Matter and just a lot of different movements in general. People, I think it's almost like not like jumping off like the diving board, so to speak, but sometimes people are afraid of the judgment that might be associated with it and like the shame you brought up. How do you feel that someone who's never really taken a stance before, how can they take that first step?
Again, I think the best step I would say is to just come across with acceptance. And I think before you just want to dive off that board, like you said, and just put something out there to react and make sure that, oh, we're being seen in this, like maybe just take a step back and like look at yourself first. Like, what isn't working here? How have we not been part of this movement? And how can we make sure that we are different moving forward? And if you want to post something right away, because there was a lot of hate too, unfortunately, especially the first week of this movement, where if you didn't post anything, you're like, oh, silence is worse than anything, because then you're actually on the opposite side. And so I think a lot of people were just in shock of like, oh, what do I do? Like, do I post or not post? And if I'm not posting, I'm getting hate for that. So there was a lot of just like
What do I
back
do?
and forth. And I myself, I'm like, I don't even know how to deal with this. And I have an agency, and luckily, my Black business partner and I were, calling each other a lot and just like how to handle it all. But I think what you can say if you wanted to say anything is like, hey, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're listening, and we are going to do whatever we can internally to make a difference. And then you take a step back and you actually do look at yourself internally, because communicating on social media is not everything. If it stops there, then no change has actually happened, right? So I think go take a step back and look at yourself and look at your organization, and really come up with some framework where you can make a difference. And then that is the framework that you then communicate to your followers and to the world.
Of course, yeah, that's the most important step. Now, with this movement and the traction that it's gaining, and your business partner you brought up, has she been educating you on her own story, or is it you're learning a lot from just society? Where are you getting your knowledge from?
So her and we have always, I mean, it was pretty obvious to us at first that I'm white from Sweden and she's this black girl from LA, and we could not be from worlds that were further apart. It's really funny. But just being together, and I stayed with her a lot when I've been in LA and stuff. We always been having conversations in the car, and she's told me about her upbringing and things that she had to deal with, and crazy stuff like, they had to just, run into the car and leave because they were people with guns outside our house. It's just crazy stuff that me coming from a countryside in Sweden would never even imagine.
Hmm.
And it's made her become the person she is today. And she's strong and really powerful and driven and so kind and so caring. But I think what I realized with like in all of this is like, I actually haven't really asked her the deeper questions. I mean, we have sort of touched on the surface of all of it. And I've always come from a place where I thought I was understanding and I was super part of the movement. And of course, I care about racial justice and equality for everyone. But I haven't really looked at what that means like to be an ally in real life. And so it's more than just saying that you are part of the change or like, I'm supportive of this. But if you just let things happen as they are happening right now, being aware of the issue is not making you any part of the movement at all.
No.
And I think how we have grown within just the past few weeks is that, yeah, I asked her questions, but I think just she needed to take a step back, actually. She was too overwhelmed with the social media riots and stuff. And she was like, I have a daughter to tend to, and she's black, and she needs her mother right now. And there's too many images of shooting and stuff going on, and I need to tap out. And so I actually ended up being the one running everything on social media. So I think I learned a lot from just being present and, seeing other people's posts and listening. And I think that was, the biggest learning curve for me. And I think sometimes we got to understand we can't always be leaders. Sometimes you're just a listener and the one learning.
Definitely, definitely, especially movements like these is and learn to be allies. It's different for you and I just because, like you mentioned, you're from Sweden and I'm very white. And it's like I want to help and support all my friends who are African American. And it's just how do you go about it in the right way without coming across as ignorant and all that, so to speak. So I think knowledge is power, and I think understanding and acceptance is key always. With your agency, where do you see it in 5 years?
We always said this. We would love to be more of a global agency. We do have models all over the world currently, but from a market standpoint, we are mainly operating in the United States. So having offices in maybe London or other parts of Europe and even Africa or Australia or Asia would be really cool. What we do want to transition more into too is really representing models as more than just a model and a pretty face. And we have the most incredible people on our boards. I mean, we have you, we have people who are public speakers, who have podcasts, who are content creators, who are certified nutritional health coaches, who are really helping people's lives. And I think there is a lot of opportunity to transition into more of like a diverse, way of representing talents. And I think also what's so cool to see now in COVID is that brands are looking for different ways to work with talent.
Right?
It's like it's not just about coming to set and being styled and getting makeup on and taking a few photos. Like, no, how can you actually start communicating this brand in a different way? And maybe that means booking a model to come speak at a conference in their name, like it can be all sorts of things. So I think what I really want to see and what we're trying to push with the agency is just providing an image of models as more than just a pretty face and someone who can actually make change in the world and lead people and teach.
I think that's so incredible. And I think that's why I was so drawn to role models. And because you're right, it is more about being, more than just a pretty face. A lot of people see models and they're like, oh, she's just pretty. Oh, she's just that. It's like, hey, man, like I have a story, I have a message, and I have a platform. So why do you think it's so important for models to get behind causes and have a platform?
Well, bottom line is we have a lot of work to do in the world. We are facing a lot of crises, and not to get into any of the heavy topics, but we don't have a lot of time to figure this out. And
Yeah.
I was in a very heated argument with my husband last night of what's
Oh, no.
possible and what's not. And he's like, there's no way the world's going to change. I'm like, well, it has to change because otherwise it's all over. So I get very passionate about
I'm
these
sure he
things.
lost that battle.
Oh, we just left it at like, let's just, agree to disagree. But, it was also good practice for me because I'm like, he's so on board my side and he loves me and, what I do. And so like, there's going to be people much more out there that I need to be, dealing with. So I think, if just thinking about the types of change and um, yeah, like how much change that we need in the world today. And I'm saying that in like a human consciousness shift, right? It's like, what do we believe is possible? What do we want to see in a future world? And what do we actually value? And like that is such a humongous shift where it's going to be so uncomfortable and so scary. And we're going to start looking at different things than the things that we are appreciating today. And I ultimately think it's going to be a much better world. And as soon as we can let go of the world as we think of it today, it's going to be just wonderful stuff, but it's going to be uncomfortable. And I think for us to push that movement, to push that change, we need all sorts of forces that we can possibly bring together. And I think that is why celebrities and influencers and models have such an important platform to help push that message. And I hate seeing when there's someone with like hundreds of thousands of followers and there's so many people like following and liking and listening and they don't say anything of value. And I'm like, you're a waste of talent. And I do think that if you're pretty or if you have a talent or if you're funny or cool or whatever it is that brings you a platform, it is your responsibility to use that platform for good because we are in dire times and we need to have see change happen very fast. And so if you're not doing everything you can to be part of that change, then you need to give that platform to someone else. And that's all I want to say.
Right? Pass it off. Give it to someone that's using it. Now, I'm
Right.
with you. I think we live in an egocentric culture, I think, right now. And especially with a lot of things being viral and kind of like one hit wonders. And then people's like, oh my God, like people are listening to you. Please do something with it. And clearly the world is listening to you. And it's just so inspiring to be able to sit down and talk with you about all these things you're passionate about because you and I both have grown so much from when we met each other to now. And I really think your agency is it's going to change the world because it's never been done before. And, if you can help ignite that change, then you're doing so much. I'm so proud of you. I really am.
Thanks, girl. And likewise, it's just, I mean, I've been following your journey and you writing your book and going on your book tour and now on stages talking, and you are making a real difference for young people. And I love that. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Yeah, no problem, no problem. So is there anything else that you want to talk about, bring up?
Oh, how far can I go into soil? No, just kidding. I can get very nerdy when it comes to climate change and stuff like that.
I love,
No,
yeah.
it's for a different argument. We could talk about that at a different time. No, I would just say like honestly, right now it's a very crazy year. It is unlike anything any of us expected, obviously, and I just find myself pivoting from, if not day by day, then hour by hour, and
Hmm.
just really coming back to listening to what would make sense in the future. Like there were all these ideas I had of like my life and where I wanted to be and the sort of lifestyle I wanted to have. And then I just keep really trying to pay attention to what brings me value. And right now that is making my cup of coffee in the morning and being able to sit outside and listen to the birds and going for my morning walks and coming home and working. And it's not all about like going all over the place and going to cool events and stuff, like things that I always dreamed of in the past. I mean, of course, that's still an exciting,
Yeah,
thought, but
there's
I
sometimes.
think Right. It's like, obviously I can't do that right now because of COVID, but I think this is a time where we really just need to take the opportunity to reflect and look to ourselves and really start asking those deeper questions of what does success look like? What is value? And does that mean this idea of constant growth of, the more money I can make, then the more stuff I can buy, then I can show that off on Instagram. And like, is that really the value you want? Or is it more important to work a sane amount of hours and have time over in the day to hang out with your family and see your friends and go for your walks and like all the things that you appreciate in life? Like, what is actually important? And I think if all of us can start asking those questions and really look at, what does growth look like? What is success? What is abundance? And if we start to just change those systems and those rules that we live by, we have a chance of changing the world.
Wow. That was powerful. So powerful. I think COVID has really almost, not that we needed this because God knows it's horrific and is just taking way too many lives, but I think the world is speaking and almost saying, we need to come together. And I think people are kind of waking up to that. I think that this horrible, awful pandemic has really forced people to look themselves in the face and say, I should be doing more. And so I agree with everything you said because people need to be passionate and appreciate the little things, appreciate the birds chirping. I mean, they're so loud now. Like I'm like, wow, like I can actually hear nature. So we all just need to wake up and get passionate, get behind something, and all be a role model in our own lives.
Amen. And like, yes, it's a really, I mean, we can't let that pass us. It's a terrible time right now and people are dying, which not to say this, justifies anything, but in climate change, people are dying in much bigger numbers every year. So the fact that people are dying is not news. But
Yeah.
however, what's right now, I mean, it's sort of unprecedented that we have a virus that's literally all over the globe. And
Mhm.
how I see that is like, if you have been ignoring symptoms of a fever or any sort of illness in your body and you keep just, eating more pills and trying to suppress those symptoms and not, see for what it is, there's going to be a time your body is like, nope, you're going to lay here for weeks in fever and you're going to feel awful. And then it's going to, kill out the germs that needs to go so that you can survive. And I think that is what's happening to the world right now. Like we're taking it too far. We keep ignoring all the signs that, we're killing the planet, we're killing ourselves. And we needed the wake up call. And so, yeah, we're put to bed right now. And so we need to recover.
Mhm.
And I say that as, a sort of unity. And I'm healthy and happy. So I'm privileged to say that. But as a people and as a species, we really need to wake up and see what's not working and how can we be better. Be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest.